maybe we'll just kind of keep this as a record of what we did today for the optional lecture. So congratulations for coming to today's MCR optional lecture. And hopefully this will be helpful in your modeling development. I'm going to go ahead and set up an image plane for one of the props that I think are kind of relevant for some of the conversation we started with EdgeFlow the other day. Let me go ahead and desktop and lecture material and lecture 1 and milestone 1 references. And there was a table that I think I'm going to go ahead, yeah, that one. I'm going to go ahead and do something like this. Because I think, I can probably finish it in the time that we have and take questions. But what I like about it is that it's got some of the things that we've been starting to talk about from a modeling point of view. Yeah. So my question to you before I get started, how many guys actually use a blockout when you model? And do you find that blockout useful? Come on, guys, you could be more interactive than that. Turn on your mics. I'm starting to think you might be doing other stuff. Meh, not really. Not too much. I usually section build. Okay. And by the way, this is not really to say one way is better than the other or wrong, but I always like to kind of be very practical with the way I go about modeling. Try to do things to create the least amount of resistance possible and also help with my planning. A lot of what we're doing is planning our moves, you know, kind of like a chess game. And how many guys play chess? What's a good strategy game on the interactive side, by the way? A little, you know, anything that you have to do any kind of planning. Yeah. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just go for the big stuff first. It would be very tempting to start kind of getting into the weeds with modeling, but the biggest thing I want to establish first is size. Now, the hard thing about this particular object is that we only have one vantage point. So we're going to have to make some choices. There's some things that we can steal in terms of size and get, and there are other things that we're going to have to be a little creative about. And I'm going to give you, I'm going to go ahead and try to attempt to block this out. And literally, I'm going to start with one of the biggest, most important things to kind of keep in mind, which is the concept of starting with a basic overall polycube. Now, I know you guys know that. We use our primitives a lot, but I'd be interested to see how far you use them, and I'm also going to show you a way to think about your modeling a little differently. Okay? Now, if I were to go ahead and start kind of changing the perspective, maybe we kind of deal with the idea of the width of it. So maybe I kind of work on it this way. Now, the hard part is that we have to make the mental adjustment of how wide this thing actually is. And right now, because it's on a diagonal, it's a little bit tough to kind of get that to totally work the way we want it to. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and find another strategy to kind of get my proportions for this object, and at least from the word go, be able to be a little bit more in the ballpark. Now, the hard part is that I can definitely measure out the tabletop. I can measure out the thickness, in some cases, of the wood. The overall, though, is going to be the challenge. So, and by the way, is that Calvin Quinn? We got two people. Or is that Kadeem? Or is that William? If you guys got stuff happening in the background, like traffic or TV's on, either turn them off, or I'll just have to kind of mute you guys. All right, there you go. Cool, thanks. I think I'm just going to mute you, and then we'll go from there. All right. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try a different strategy. I'm going to actually bring in my image plane in the perspective window. I don't know if you guys do this or have even attempted to do this. It's one of those strategies that you don't talk about a lot, but I think I find a lot of use out of it. I don't know if you've ever tried to. Let me go ahead and see milestone 1 references, tables. There we go. All right. So I want you to see this for a second, because right now what I want to do is I want to show you that you can actually look at your stuff in perspective. I'm going to go ahead and change the depth a little bit, push it back a little bit more. I know it's hard to tell, but I just want to give myself some room. All right. So what I want to do is I want to kind of get this sort of measured out in such a way where I can get the width and depth of this. Now, I already know that the camera that I have in Maya is a little bit distorted compared to the image here. It's got a wider lens in Maya compared to how this was shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the camera, and I'm going to go ahead and this number here, this thing called the focal length. Focal length of a camera is basically the equivalent of whether or not I want to make my lens a wide angle lens or a zoom lens, kind of like for portraiture. I'm going to increase this number to 70 because I want to flatten out the space a little more. I want to kind of get the lens to mimic the way the photo was taken. So I'm going to go to 100 and see what we get. So if you notice, all right, the space in the way that cube looks, I'm going to go create another camera so you can see the difference of this. All right. Right now, this new camera is at 35. All right. And you can see the perspective lines are a little bit more pushed down and pushed up. It's a lot more. But if I go to the other one, I'm going to go make this a side-by-side window. Let's go over here. Let's go to the original perspective window. All right. See how this one's a little bit more up-down in terms of the perspective. So what does this give me? Well, what it gives me is a little bit more of an ability to match the way I can match the shape of the reference and get my sizes down. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my cube, all right, and I want to really work on getting proportions right, because proportions are what we're really trying to kind of get in the early phase of our modeling. All right, that's the first and foremost. All right. So you want to get your proportions down. So right now, if we look at the cube that I originally built, it's a little too long and it's a little bit too tall. So I'm going to go ahead and play around. I'm going to hold down Control while I do this. I'm going to widen it just a little bit. And I'm going to change the depth. All right. So that it's a little bit more matching. All right. Let's go get the width a little bit more. And I'm definitely going to change my preferences because apparently my middle mouse button is screwing me up. So I'm going to change the mouse scroll wheel and click off because it's competing for functionality that I don't want. I don't like zooming with my mouse scroll window. Some of you guys do, but I do a lot of vert snapping, and I also don't like to compete for that functionality. Let's go get the height correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get the height correct. And again, it's just little things here. All right. So I want to get closer to the idea of how wide or this thing is. Now I don't have to worry about it being perfect, all right? But I want to get a little bit closer to what's there. I also realize that I might have flattened out this camera a little bit too much, all right, because it's not matching in the perspective like I thought. So I'm going to go ahead and select camera. I'll drop this down and just see if I can get this a little bit more closer to the ballpark. And again, this is just a little bit of it's going to get me 95% there. And that's the main thing I want it to do. Okay? I just want it to get me 95% there. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that the top angle and the bottom angle sort of match in a way that the perspective lines are converging. Let me go ahead here, select, and let's drop it down. So I'm noticing my number now, my focal length is dropping lower because I'm trying to better match the top part of that line and the bottom of the legs. And it just helps me kind of get there. And again, this is just a little tip that I do. It's not going to be perfect because computer lenses are different than camera lenses. They don't have the same kind of distortion that you would expect from stuff. But let me go drop this down just a little bit lower and see if that improves it just a little bit. Okay. So now I'm starting to get a little bit of the top. The legs are sort of getting to be a better job matching. Let me drop that just a little bit longer. And you can see that I'm starting to at least be close to the way this perspective is in the camera. And again, this is just to really match it a little better. So what is this telling me right now? It looks like I've got the width and the height of the proportion to the top. I look like I'm almost got the height or the tall, how tall it goes from the top to the bottom. And then the width here and there, it looks like we're almost there. So this cube, getting this and feeling comfortable with this is going to be important. And I know that maybe the bottom part of this is probably going to flare out a little bit. So we're probably going to have to account for that. All right, so let's say I use this top part of the lid as my start point. I'm going to go ahead and put this on a layer, all right, and select, and just make sure. Yeah, so I think I'm at that point where I'm like, I've gone as far as I could go. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'll just lock my camera temporarily, and I'll select it. And I'll just go ahead and lock selected for now. And then I'll go to my other one. And then I'll just kind of work in that space and then use this as sort of a frame of reference for how I'm working. So what I want to do now is I've got my cube more or less set up. Now, again, it's not perfect. It's a little off, but it's closer in terms of the overall dimensions. So how do I start cutting this cube apart? Well, for one thing, I'm going to go ahead and start doing a quick block out of what I think these spatial dimensions are going to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and rip this thing apart. All right. So let's go ahead to the Insert Edge Loop tool. And that'll get me the top part, but mainly I just want to get thickness. And the truth of the matter is I could really just steal that piece of geometry from the top. Let's see. We're probably going to go ahead. You know what? Let's just go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to go ahead and grab this face, duplicate the face, all right? And then I'm just going to go ahead and start blocking out the top part of the model. So go over here to face, and then extrude the face for depth. There we go. So I've got the top part of that model. It's one of the easiest parts of the model to get, all right? And I'm pretty close and happy to that, all right? So that part is done. And actually, let me go ahead and, there we go. So that part is the top part. So how do we leverage the rest of the model? Control-Shift-H. So now I'm going to go ahead and maybe say, well, it looks like it tapers in a little bit. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead with that Insert Edge Loop. Let's go ahead and I'm going to kind of get the start point for where those pieces of wood, those support pieces of wood are. Here, here. So that tells me a little bit on how deep I'm going to cut in. Now, I'm not doing anything with this yet. I just am measuring stuff. All right. So let's see. Where do I think this is going to go? And that flares out. So that's good to know. All right, cool. So what I might do is I might say, okay, let's say the width of this piece of wood is going to be all this stuff right over here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and extract it, all right, or duplicate the face. I'll just keep my block out the way it is. I'm going to take that geometry, Control H, and now I've got a simplified version of it. I'm going to get rid of that edge and that edge because it's not helping me. Delete edge. And so I'm going to go ahead and push this back. All right. And I kind of want to use that as sort of positionally where I think this piece of wood is going to go. Now I know it flares out here, so now we're going to make the adjustment. I'm going to go ahead here and then say, all right, let's go ahead and put an edge there, edge there. And what I want to do is I'm just going to use the barest of edges right now, again, because we're still in blockout mode. All I'm worried about in blockout mode are my size relationships. Now, I know that I'm not going to be perfect because the camera angle isn't really hitting me, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and use this front leg as sort of my guide for size. All right, same thing over here. That front leg is my sort of guide. All right, so now what that leaves me is a piece of wood that looks like that. Right now we haven't done any hole cuts yet, and I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just blocking things out. So I've got a piece of wood here. So let's go ahead and flip those normals. And I've got something that's going to represent the legs. Now I could go ahead and say, you know what? Let's go ahead and duplicate or extrude those faces, and I could quickly block out that shape just to get these elements in quickly. All right. But I know I'm going to have to go back at some point and deal with it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that if I had to block it out right now, that's kind of where I would wind up being. All right. And you can tell there's some discrepancies in this, but I'm using sort of this front size dimension as sort of my guide. And what I might do is I might go over here. Let me go to my other perspective camera. And just to double check to see if I'm even remotely in the ballpark. So it looks like I'm a little deeper here, so I might maybe bring that in just to match it a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to make some adjustments while I'm here. Okay, or maybe what I do is I use that position and then maybe lengthen this guy. Cool. Either way, it's just a block out. All right. Now, if I wanted to get those size pieces over here on this guy, I'm not going to worry about modeling them just yet. I'm just going to go ahead and maybe indicate that there's some geometry that sticks out. So what I might do here, all right, is I might steal some geometry from this part, all right, and say, let's duplicate the face there, all right, and then let's move it into position where I think it needs to go, all right, and then figure out where this is all sticking out. So let me go back to my perspective window. I'm going to turn on that. So it looks like I'm kind of hitting what I need to hit with the width on that. That's good. So now I'll just go ahead and grab that piece. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab the verts and then drop it down. And I know that I could add some edges here and start doing some stuff, but right now I'm just measuring. I'm going to put an edge here, Maybe I'll cut that in half, actually, just to kind of figure out where the middle is. Actually, I probably should have done that before. Let me go Z back. I'm going to cut it in half here just to find my middle. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say, give me the middle there. And then I can go ahead and say, okay, where's the middle here? Where's the middle here? And that could be a good sort of start point to kind of figure out how to model this stuff. And what I might do just to kind of block it in is to grab this edge, extrude, down. And I probably should have done the same thing here. Actually, you know what? Let's just do one side. extrude down, all right? And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab it, pull that down. Same thing here. Insert edge, and then put that down. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of knocking in what I think I'm going to need. I'm not worried about trying to get too high res yet. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and take this piece of geometry and mirror it. All right, so that's where I'm at right now with it. So let's go ahead and mirror it. It looks like I'm going to mirror it in Z. And now this is the new mirror tool, so we're going to have to kind of be very, I've been using the bounding box function. We're going to mirror the axis. I think we're going to go in the positive direction. Merge word. I'm going to go give it a custom. Let me go over here. Small, very small. And let's see if this thing behaves. Hit apply. So now I'm going to have to go negative Z. Hit apply. There we go. So I basically blocked it out. So now I want to go ahead and figure out how the thickness of this. So let me go ahead and turn on the other camera just to see what I'm doing. And let's turn on this. So I'm going to go ahead and, so one of two things. Either I've got to make this part of my model narrower, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to still keep on measuring. Let's just double check and make sure, because maybe now this is where I make some slight adjustments. It looks like I might be able to kind of do a little bit of both. So I'm going to grab these, bring them in just a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead, center pivot. It's still a flat piece of geometry. I'm going to hold down the C key. And then, okay. All right, so I've got that. Now I'm going to go ahead here, grab these faces, and extrude for depth and thickness. And that'll at least give me an idea of thickness. All right. So all I'm doing, guys, is I'm just doing a block out. All right. And let's say I want to use that piece on the other side. I'm going to go Command Duplicate, and then I'll just put it onto the other side. And I'm eyeballing it right now. Okay. So all I got right now, guys, is a block out. All right. So now we want to look at what we did and make sure that we're happy with some of the measurements. This is the place where we can actually say, are we on target for our measurements or not? And then from there, we can decide, do we want to go further with modeling and going into shape making? All right. Now, some of you might have said, well, I would have been done modeling this whole thing. I would have put the whole cuts and the whole thing. And you know what? I would say if you've got a style of modeling that you work with that definitely helps you get to your goal, awesome. And I'm not going to tell you that I've got it all figured out in a way that is going to match the way you think you work. But I know this, that the most important decisions in the early stage of a model is when you're working and dealing with size. And if you understand how to deal with size and get that solved early with the simplest amount of shapes, that can go a long way to being successful on your checkouts. All right? All right. Any questions so far about kind of what I did for the blockout? So the question here, Norman is saying, are you putting each individual piece on its own layer? Not a different layer, but I am giving it based on the way it's constructed. So in other words, the top part of the model, the piece of wood, that's its own piece. All right. Over here, these side pieces are probably glued in. And one could pretty much argue that they might have even put hole cuts and actually put pegs in those. And also, it looks like my position is off. That's why I was kind of wondering. I actually think I have to kind of come in on that position. Just looking at the model now, I was wondering, it's like, what was going on? It looks like that was actually cut in to this piece of wood. So I might have to make an adjustment here. I think I narrowed this and I shouldn't have. So it's like one of those adjustments that I made where maybe, in fact, I was right to begin with, and then I just need to go ahead and widen this. But guess what? The easiest time to make these adjustments are at this stage of the model. Okay? So the other thing is I have to decide now if I want to fit these pieces together. So this is going to involve me actually looking at my reference a little bit more closely. Let me go to a 4 thing now. Let me turn off polygons so we can see this. And I'm also going to turn off the grid so we can see. So what we want to do is we want to take a look and see how this is made. So I'm looking at it now and I'm like, oh, it looks like it was actually cut in and that this piece fits in like a jigsaw. Well, that's important information. A lot of people gloss this over. So if that's the case, this is the place to deal with it simply. All right. So what I might do here, guys, is I might go ahead back to the model. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and while this is flat, and this is one of the reasons why I'll go back to making this flat geometry, is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, all this stuff. Boom. All right. And then in the easiest state of modeling, go ahead with my multi-cut tool, or I can just go ahead and do this. This actually might be even easier. You know what? Screw it. Let's go multi-cut. All right. But before we do multi-cut, I'm going to go ahead and split this in half. All right. I'm going to make my life easier because this is, again, this is all about kind of thinking a few heads. So I know I'm going to mirror this at some point. So let's just go ahead and split this in half. All right. And now I'm just going to go ahead and use my multi-cut tool, and I'm just going to cut in this shape over here, and then I'll just kind of finish it over here. Cool. So now I've got it, and you're saying, well, I'm not impressed, but I'm just cutting that in so that it actually fits together. So now I've got a big N-gon. Well, how do I kind of fix that? I'm just going to go ahead and multi-cut this and then finish it off here. All right. Now, I want to start drilling down to the shape because we're at that point. And by the way, this is a good opportunity to kind of save what you're working on. So by the way, I just wanted to show you a little bit of where we started from a blocking stage. So that overall cube kind of got us started. All right. And then we did a blockout based on, you know, what I call a higher fidelity blockout. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead here and command duplicate, boom, and then I'll just kind of move it over here and reverse. So we did a more higher fidelity blockout, and now we're going to start transitioning into the modeling. All right. So actually, you know what? I'm going to save the breadcrumbs of this because it's actually probably good to kind of show the process. So I'm going to command G this just real quick. Command G, and then I'll just kind of duplicate this, and then we'll just kind of look at it the way we kind of approached it, and then we can kind of see how we go from outer size dimensions, more refined blockout, and then actual transitioning into modeling. So I'm going to go back to this shape. All right, let me go over here. So again, I like to work simple. All right. So I want to go back to this. I'm also going to go ahead and say, you know, let's start cutting the geo for the cave, this part here, this kind of Arabian looking form. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my perspective window, maybe just as a guide. So the cool thing is I've got it all kind of cut and I've got it kind of sort of in the space, so I can already tell that maybe I need to do a hole cut that goes above where this is. So I'm not going to worry about the edges I have there right now. What I'm going to do instead, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and commit to making the shape I know is there by using the multi-cut tool first. This is where I ignore the idea that Let's go here. And there's a snapping thing that's going on right now. And see, and that's the hard part. Let me go back. So what's happening, my multi-cut tool has got like a snapping thing going on here. Let me go ahead here and just see what's up. Step snap. And it's like, so I might, let me just turn that off. All right. And slice tool. All right. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the hole. By the way, let me go to my other perspective camera so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead. I have the, see, he wants to go there, so I'm going to go and zoom in closer. Okay, and now I'm just going to start modeling the shape that I want. And I'm not worried right now about matching edges or anything like that at all. What I want to do is I just want to get this part cut. Now I might go back. Looks a little clunky up there. Maybe, so let's see if I can get this shape a little bit more refined. So I can get that hole. That's cool. So I'm going to go with the idea right now of a four-sided circle. So what does that do? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of faces. Get rid of the stuff I don't need. So I went for the shape first of the hole, and then I worry about correcting it. And because I had done the work in splitting it in half, I know that I can mirror this later. All right? So now I'm going to go ahead and then correct for the engon. So there's an engon here. I'll just kind of put that out here. And we're going to need an edge anyway to be able to shape that leg. So I'm going to go ahead here and move that in. You know what? It looks like we might need a few edges to kind of make that a little bit more gradual. So let's go ahead and play connect the dots. So we'll multi-cut over here, over here. All right. And maybe what I'll do is I'll just keep my life a little simple and just kind of make it that kind of a transition. I'll get rid of that one. Again, keeping things simple while I'm blocking things out. All right. So there might be one edge I might be able to bring in there because it might be still curving. Cool. All right. So now I've got that. Let me go ahead here, get rid of this. So now this is where I kind of start looking at my stuff again and see, am I even in the ballpark? So I'm going to go back to my perspective window, and now I'm going to compare. Now it looks like the location of the hole and the size of the hole a little off. So while this is still pretty flat, I'm going to go ahead back here and just kind of scooch them down. Nudge them just a little bit. Okay? So this is me just kind of going in there. Oops. And it looks like also this part of the hole can get a little closer. Round it off. And it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to try to. All right. There we go. All right. So now I've got this piece. So now we're going to go ahead and take advantage of the mirror tool. So let's go mirror. And let's go over here. Now I'm going to go and mirror in X, and let's see, is it negative? Let's see what happens. Yes, it is. So I'm getting modeling on the left and the right side of that shape. And now I can go ahead and say, let's go grab these faces, extrude for depth and thickness. And now I can get the size relationships of that. Reverse the normals. And now I've got something in its place. So now I'm going to go ahead and command duplicate. And then I'll just change the pivot, D middle mouse button, D middle mouse button there. And then I'll just snap it to that position. All right. So this guy can go away now. So now we have a little bit more of an advanced block out for this part of the model. Now, are there any questions that you guys have at this point? Has this been helpful to see develop over time? Calvin, Calvin, I use the multi-cut tool to kind of cut out the shapes. All right. So process is important. The way you think about modeling, the way you think about stuff. A lot of people underestimate the planning part. All right. And this is where a lot of you guys can get into trouble, but we don't want to get you guys in trouble. We want to get you guys successful. All right. Now, there's a couple of things that I see that maybe I might kind of fix. Looks like I'm sticking out a little bit too much here. So what I might do, guys, is before I get started, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of half this part of the model. And then I'm going to go ahead and shorten it over here just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and mirror it. Okay. Back in Z. And I think it's negative. And it looks like I got the size a little bit better for what I needed to do there. And so I was I wasn't really happy with that. So you know what? And again, you're always reassessing, guys. That's the other thing a lot of beginners make the mistake. They just get very satisfied with their work and don't think that their work is worth re-examining. You're always re-examining your stuff to see if it is in fact working still. All right. So again, I'm always taking a look and seeing if I'm buying what's going on here. All right. So now let's go ahead and start working on these parts here. And this is, again, just kind of adding the edges that we need. So now I'm going to go refine those shapes. And you know what? Because I know that I can only work on half of it, let's just focus on this side. And so let's go over here. And I'll get my insert edge loop. And again, we're going to need some extra edges. So now I'm just going to go ahead and scooch it in. Start adding the curvature. And again, let's see. I think I'm going to need something up here. So you know what I will do is, you know what? We're going to go flat again. So this is the part where I'm like, all right, I'm going to go flat. Every once in a while, I make my life a little bit complicated. Well, if it starts to get complicated, let's go make it simple again. So what does that mean? I'm just going to literally go ahead and get rid of those middle faces. Show polygons. I'll just go get rid of this, because it's always easier to edit stuff when it's flat first, and then go ahead and, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert edge loop. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and put an edge loop up here. All right. And I probably just need to go to relative right now. So I want to kind of get that there. And then I want this to sweep a little bit here. It's going to be curvature. So I'm going to get rid of this face here. And I'm going to change the way this works. You're saying, I don't get what you're talking about. Well, I'm going to go and use my multi-cut. I'm going to go from this corner to here. All right. And now I'm going to go and grab this edge, delete it, grab this edge, delete edge. So I changed the flow of the edge flow. So instead of it being up, down, I changed it so that it swept this way. Boom, boom, boom. Before it was a crisscross. All right. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is when you're doing shape making and you want to be able to get your edge flow right. So what does this give me? Well, this gives me now the ability to kind of create the curvature in those spots that I know that I'm going to need an extra edge, and then be able to sweep it the way the reference is telling me to. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn, let's see. So that is here. So you know what? I'm going to go push this baby back here. Move it back. I'm going to move this one back. There we go. And you know what? I'm just going to make some size adjustments on this side as well, because I can. See, always refining, guys. This is not like, well, I'm just going to live with what I got. I'm going to make the adjustments, and I'm going in there and then shaping. And it's a lot easier to shape curved stuff, flat stuff, than it is something that's already in the model, in the round. So now I'm going to go double check the curvature from here. And vertex. And now I'm just going to go ahead and make some shape changes. And I'm going to round it off here. Now I might need more edges, guys. It is possible that I might need to go ahead and just... But right now I'm trying to solve it with fewer edges, and then I can always go back and enhance the shape. Neat. So now I've got that flat. So now let's go ahead and mirror. And looks like I'm going to be mirroring in X. So let's see if I have that already set. X, hit apply, and then one other thing. I'm going to go ahead and delete some history. Make sure that I'm not screwing myself. Every once in a while that can happen. All right, we're going to go in Z, excuse me. Hit apply. There we go. So now I've got that shape. And now we can use our blockout. Let me turn this off. And let me go into my second perspective window so you can see this. So that shape is there. And now I'm going to go grab these faces and extrude for depth and thickness. So I'm using my blockouts. I'll even snap, boink, right there. And then I'll reverse the normals. So now this is starting to come together. All right. Now, resolution-wise, we could definitely add more edges. But it's definitely right now in its current state. And guess what? We're going to use the position of this. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut and paste this command, duplicate. All right. And hold down the V key. Snap it in place. Control H. Get rid of this guy. And then Control Shift H, bring back the other one. All right. So this is where we are so far. All right. We started out with a cube. All right. Then we did a very broad blockout, which kind of gave us a loose idea of the shapes, and we figured out the parts. And this is really important. This is part of the way you analyze this stuff. And we leveraged the perspective window so that we could take advantage of making sure that our basic proportions were within about 95 or so % of the actual proportions of the object. So that helped get a lot of these early size dimensions. And guess what? A lot of you guys fail checkout because you don't get size relationships figured out. So this is a little tip. You may want to take advantage of this where it makes sense. Again, this is not foolproof. This is not going to match perfectly. You got to kind of use it for 95%, and then you're constantly making adjustments. And then finally, now, we're getting to the point where we're getting a lot more resolved with the shapes. But we're still simple enough where if we need to make some changes, we'd have at least the opportunity to do so if we need to. Okay? All right, guys. So now I guess my question to you is this making sense? And do you have any questions at this juncture? All right. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to turn on your mics. Okay. So questions? Yeah. Anybody? Are we good?
I was wondering how you would work the holes for the pegs in, because that's like my biggest problem, like just fitting holes in like already a geometry.
Are you talking about like the holes that you see in this part of the geometry? Let me go back to the reference. You talking about this stuff?
Yes.
All right, and you want to put those in? Yes. Okay, so let's say we had to do that. Let's say that that was something that we were going to do. First of all, this is one of those either or situations. I would say If you want to put them in, then great. But we're going to start getting into hole. Have you started watching the videos for hole cuts in topology? Because that's going to be really super helpful to you. Have you watched that yet? That's going to be
Was it in the
select
list of
tracking.
podcasts that was on YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh, I must say I have seen it. I'll go back and check.
Well, I'm going to show it to you in practical terms because it's a good question. And ultimately, where the rubber meets the road modeling-wise is can you actually put in that geometry? Like right now, my topology does not account for the ability to put a hole there. So it's good that you ask, how do I deal with it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, refine that shape. So I'm going to cut and paste all of this stuff so that I can kind of have this sort of like as a way of watching this build and grow. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this shape, move this out. All right. And now I'm going to go ahead and now we're going to go rebuild this shape again. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? I'm going to get rid of these middle faces. All right. I'm going to go ahead and shift grow and select this and get rid of that back set of faces. All right. And I know that I'm going to probably mirror this side, so I'm going to go ahead. So first of all, you can't be afraid of destroying your stuff like I just did. But guess what? You know, each stage of my modeling gets it better and better. So now I got to figure out how to plan in the hole cuts. So let's say I was going to do 2 of those hole cuts. I got to first figure out where I want to put them. So it looks like the first hole is happening around the curvature here. All right. So somewhere in here and then up here. So I've got to create a region where I can make that hole cut here and here. Now, when I'm modeling, I like to think in terms of like maybe kind of dealing with maybe like an 8-sided cylinder as sort of my kind of start point for cutting the holes. I can always increase the resolution if I need to, but it's easier to handle it. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to show you how I'm going to isolate this geometry so I can get a hole cut the way I want it. All right? And it looks like they're stacked right over each other. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and aim to put a hole cut here and put a hole cut here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to create an X marks the spot. All right? I'm going to go ahead with my multi-cut tool and I'm going to go ahead and say I want to create an X marks the spot over 4 faces. All right? See what I'm doing here, guys? So I'm going to go ahead and say boom. So I want to set up my hole cuts with this X marks the spot. All right. And I think also I'm going to isolate the hole cut down below and kind of keep it inside the shape. In other words, I don't want to going to the edges. I don't want these like kind of points. I want to keep this kind of free for a reason. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of the X over here and over here. All right. So X marks the spot. That's an important thing because that's going to set you up. So now you're saying, well, what's the big deal about the X? Well, guess what? You can turn a vertex where this X marks the spots into an 8-sided face. And the way you do that is you select the verts and you go chamfer vertex. You see that? So chamfer vertex now gives me the opportunity to say, okay, I just turned a vert into 8 faces. Well, now I got to shape this. So how do we shape this in a way that makes sense? So I'm going to show you a strategy that you can do. Now I'm going to go ahead and see if I could bring in a cylinder. All right. I'm going to go ahead here, bring in a polycylinder. And I'm going to go ahead and just keep it 8 sides for now because it's a little easier to kind of deal with. So, and let's go 8 sides. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and size the cylinder close to how I think the size is going to be here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to bring this over. Let's go and see if I can bring it over. And I'm going to use the size and the side of this here. And you guys tell me how big I should make this cylinder compared to these holes. All right, and you let me know when to stop. Tell me when. Tell me when. How's that look? What do you guys think? Is that the right size? What do you think? Cool. I'm going to go with it because I hear nobody. I don't know what you guys are doing. All right. So, all right. So now I'm going to go ahead and say this is my guide. I'm going to rotate it like this. And I'm going to go ahead and just stick it where I think it needs to go. As a matter of fact, the best way to do this is snapping. Again, D middle mouse button V, pop it in place. And now I'll just go ahead and hold down the V key, bam, and then let's move it. So right now it's flush. Now you could eyeball this, guys, if you wanted to. I'm not telling you you can't eyeball this. But if you don't want to eyeball it, let's say you do want to be a little bit more precise. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and select these guys. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the faces, or the verts. And now I'm going to do some vert snapping. Hold down the V key and match it. All right? Hold down the V key and match it. Move over, hold down the V key. All right, hold down the V key, bam. So I'm being a little bit anal about the measurements, but guess what? I'm using Maya's primitives as a guide to making something round. Boom. And then hold down the V key, there we go. This one needs to be fixed, so I'll go ahead and fix it. There we go. So that guy was a little bit of a template, but guess what? I got a round hole out of it. See what I'm doing? So now I'm going to do the same thing down below. I'm going to go ahead here and put this guy in the area where I want the hole to be as well. And I already know it should be flush, but if it ain't flush, oh, I guess I moved it already. So I'll just go ahead here, hold down the C key. Whoops. See? Cool. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and make the hole in the middle there. And then select vertex. And then hold down the V key. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I can use my cursor to jump around. It can jump to the next vert. So if I use my cursor, left to right cursor, hold down the V key, pop it in place, go down to the next cursor, or oops. So I guess it wants me to do that. So let's go, there you go. So actually you had to go back to the right, hold down the B key, there we go. That one, hold down the V key, bam. Okay, go back to there, hold down the V key. Let's go up here, hold down the V key. And then go back up, hold down the V key. And now I've got a hole cut on this side as well. All right. Now, I don't know if I need any of these extra edges doing some stuff here. But I might add an extra edge. Let's see. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's just kind of keep it this way. So now I got to decide if I'm actually going to, you know what? I'll just keep this since we have the shape of the sides here. There we go. I might just go ahead and scale this guy in. All right. That becomes my nuts there. Or those little studs that kind of work my way. Actually, what I should do is I go over here. And I'm not worried about the hole that's been cut into the wood here. We're not seeing this. All right. So as a matter of fact, I might just go ahead and say, you know what, let's just go right up to about here. All right. And then the rest of this, guys, I'll just delete that hole. All right. Same thing with this guy. Delete this. And now we got the hole cuts. And this is what we start going into in that hole cut video that I was showing you guys. The philosophy of how you need to kind of plan for your holes in your models. This is the way we start dealing with the issue of adding complexity. So if I wanted to be able to kind of add that, I have to put in the area. So we started with 4 faces, and then we cut it in half with the X marks the spot. So then we chamfered the vertex, and then it gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 edges flowing around, and then suddenly now we've got stuff here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start just kind of tweaking the shape here at this juncture because I think it could use a little bit more resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and, maybe add some extra edges, and then I'm going to start rounding out the shape a little bit. All right. So it's going to be smoother there. Now I know I need one probably over here, but I don't want to mess up this shape just yet. I could, but I guess I would have to kind of go in there and, you know what? Screw it. Let me go back, and then I'll show you how we're going to deal with it later. This is going to blow your mind. All right. I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to go and mirror this to the other side. So now we've got that shape. And now I'm going to go ahead here and then grab these faces, extrude for depth and thickness. And then let's go back to here. I'm going to go and thickness, and I can go and use that.
It's 10 o'clock.
It's 10 o'clock? Are you telling me? Or are you telling someone else that?
What is that? Dude, I thought you were making breakfast. Come on.
There we go. All right, guys, keep your chatter to a minimum. All right, I'm going to shut.
No, not by breakfast. Come on.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and shut you off because I don't need to hear your shit. All right. All right, there we go. So that is it. We're going to reverse those. And now we can do the same thing. So we'll update this guy, change that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and Command duplicate. And you know what? Since it's already centered, hold down the V key. There you go. All right. And then I'm going to grab these two, Command duplicate. All right. And I'm just moving them over. And I'm eyeballing it, but I don't really need to eyeball it. I can just go ahead here and then, again, hold down the V key. Boom. Snapped in place. I'm not going to worry about the other side just yet, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start committing to the modeling now. So what we're seeing, guys, and I just want to back out of it just for a moment. What we're seeing is basically I've kind of spent a lot of time building up. We started again at the beginning of today's lecture with a cube. We did a version of a blockout that got a little bit more sophisticated. All right. Then we articulated our model even more over here. All right. So we're starting to drill down our primary and our secondary shapes. And then we're starting to get a little bit more kind of planning in our hole cuts. All right. So that we can be a little bit more thoughtful about the parts and the components and the details. So at this stage of the model, we have to decide how we want to move forward from here. Now, I could probably show you manual ways of dealing with, adding in extra edges. And for a lot of beginners, the issue of adding edges could be something as simple as just doing something like this, where let's say I want to smooth out one side of the model. I might just go ahead and just say, let's go ahead and insert edge loop. Oh, it looks like I've got an end gun there. Huh, there we go. Yeah, I do. I've got an end gun. Ain't that a beach? All right. So guess what? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. Correct. Boom. Again, I'm always willing to go back and just kind of, mess with this, because you should never feel precious about your model in that way. So what I might do is, you know what? Let's go ahead and I'll just bring in my multi-cut tool here, and then maybe you know what? The easiest way is to just go ahead and just do that. That'd be the easiest way. Okay. So now it's quadded. So what a lot of beginners might want to do is probably just go ahead and add some edges, and that's fine. And that, honestly, for a lot of you guys, this is kind of where you probably are going to live. All right. maybe over here we take our multi-cut tool and it's like I've got a... So it looks like I didn't actually correct for all my end guns. Good boy, Frank. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and start adding a few extra shapes. I'm actually correcting for the end guns here. So I want to get more kind of targeted now with my shaping. All right. All right. And then this part, I'm going to say, you know what, probably needs a couple of extra edges. Insert edge loop. And then I'll just go in here. And then, again, now I'm starting to kind of commit to the shaping. Let's go over here, multi-cut tool, because it looks like I've got an end gun here. But that's okay, though, because I need the extra edges on this side. So now, go over here. So now we're starting to kind of really get in there and commit to the silhouette. So I might need an edge there, and I might need an edge. So I'm going to go ahead here, and then either scale it and round it off. There we go. So now we're starting to really refine the shapes and the hole cuts. So guess what? This one is going to go bye-bye too, but I'm going to leave that there in the meantime till I'm really happy with the shapes. All right. So now I'm going to go back and mirror. Again, I've been back and forth and mirroring on this for a while now. So I want to go and go X negative, hit apply. There goes my shape. And now we'll start refining the model as we start finishing it up. Extrude. And again, I might go back to my perspective window, get my thickness going on. Let's go this way. There we go. Reverse the normals. And then I can go ahead and get rid of this one. But before I get rid of this one, I'm going to command duplicate it, change the pivot, D middle mouse button V, and then I can use snapping, hold down the V key. Okay, Control H to hide the thing temporarily. Delete that one, Control Shift H. Now I've got a more detailed version of the model. So you can see how we're progressing the level of detail. And that was just a matter of adding edges. So now we can say, are we finished with the model yet? Well, let's go ahead and start talking about edge quality. All right, and this is where we start getting into the bevel workflow. Now, this is where I'm also going to go ahead and challenge you guys to say, what are you actually seeing here? Yeah, and let me go ahead and just turn off polygon just for a moment. Now, is this a perfectly straight board on the top, or does it have some subtle nuance that we might be able to put into it? What do you guys think? Let me turn on the sound here. All right. What do you guys think? Is it kind of like completely straight?
On the edges. It seemed like it might arch up in the middle just a slight bit.
Yeah, just a little bit, but not by a ton. But, you know, it's just one of those things where, again, you got to decide if at this stage, does this wood need it? Now, it looks like it needs a little bit more beating up on the corners, but it also looks like it might have a slight arc. And this is me now drilling down, like kind of like being a little bit, I'll say it, obsessive with the modeling. For you guys, when it comes to checkout, keeping this straight is fine. But if I had to really kind of get in there, let me go ahead and I'm going to just go ahead and add a couple of edges here. And I'm going to show you what I think I see. And then you can tell me whether or not I'm full of shit. All right. I'm going to go and hit 3 edges here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ever so slightly and gently, I'm going to bring it down. And then I'm going to go over here and then just kind of give it a little bit of an arc. See that little kind of shaping? It's subtle, but it's the kind of thing that you start looking for those places where maybe there's just a little bit of character. And then when I start beveling this thing, all right, I'm going to go look at it too. I'm going to say, let's take a look at, let me just go ahead and put the bevels on. Now again, we're only going to put in the bevel on the hardest of edges. Okay. So now we've got this and this. So I'm going to go ahead and bevel this, but guess what? It's not going to always be even everywhere either. As a matter of fact, that's too big compared to the reference. So I got to go ahead and make some tweaks to this bevel. So let's go ahead and get the size right first. And then let's go ahead and get the segments. We're going to need a few. So let's try 2. All right. Might make it just a touch bigger, but not by much. Control definitely. When you want micro adjustments, hold down Control while you're kind of sliding these adjusters. Okay. So there you go. All right. Now let's say I want to go in there and maybe, just maybe, there's like a little bit of extra. So now we're starting to drill down on the model, guys. This is me now kind of saying, is this, let me go ahead here and select that. And then, so now I'm going to go and take a look at this and say, you know what, there might be areas. Now this might be stuff that we might save for like a ZBrush pass. All right. But maybe I could justify putting in a couple of edges along this side. Let me go ahead here. I'll show you what I'm thinking. And then, so maybe I go like this. Let me go 5 on this side, or 6. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll isolate the edges. Whoops, that's too much. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because someone's phone is like killing me here. All right, so now maybe what I'll do is then I'll just kind of selectively Now, this is extra, guys. You don't need to do this for checkout, but I want to make you aware of what is possible potentially in being able to manipulate your stuff. So let's say I wanted to kind of open up the edge quality here. Maybe I scale it a little bit larger. Or maybe I go ahead and then I move it down just a touch because it's a piece of wood. Maybe I want to go ahead and kind of tighten this baby up to make it sharper there. All right? So that it's not entirely even. Maybe this part of the wood is wider and then gets narrower. And then suddenly, if I turn off my edges, do you see the variety that I'm starting to put into the model? Just by changing those edges. So guys, you could really get in there and go to town, but a lot of you guys choose not to see it, or you see it but you think it's too hard to put in. And I'm here to tell you that you could go as far as you have time for. So I want to show you what's possible because I think that you guys, while you say you see, you're not really seeing what's there. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want to put that in. All right. Now I'm using this as an example. And again, there's a lot of different ways to deal with this. But notice, this is a piece of wood. Our corners on the edges shouldn't be predictably even. Do you see the difference between that edge over here and on this side, which is a lot more even? Actually, you know what would be easier? If I go ahead and right-click and assign a Fong and then get a light in there, and then you'll see it even easier. Create, lights, point light. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up here. So if I go ahead and show you this light, see how it's uneven? See how it's kind of hitting it? Now look at this side of the model. And then look whether or not it's even. So now we start getting into the world of defiance. So this one's even edge quality, but over here, it's uneven edge quality. All right, that's finishing the shape of the model. That's really getting in there and understanding what it's made of in terms of it being wood. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the model, guys, because we're almost done, and I just want to kind of go through. So now I'm going to go make a bevel pass on everything. All right, and so this is where I start going ahead and selecting the edges that I need to. All right, all right, and only the edges that I need to. And this part, if I planned my edge flow right, it should go in easy. Now I'm going to go ahead and just save this file because I just realized that I've been working dangerously. So I'm going to go ahead and lecture. All right, let's go ahead and call this table, wood table. And I'll call it process because we actually kind of learning the process a little bit of modeling through this wood table. There we go. All right, I'm going to keep on selecting edges. All right. And oops, I'm missing an edge or two. One here. See, the trick when you're doing bevels is that you just want to make sure that you get them all. You don't want to do bevels in a way that you start beveling one side, then you miss this area, and then you keep on beveling, and then you're going to have to do a lot of cleanup. You usually want to try to hit all the connected bevels that you can. All right. Shift right click, bevel edge. There we go. And now we're going to go ahead and just 2 segments. Change this, and then maybe we'll sharpen it up just a little bit. Cool. So that's one piece. All right. And because that's done, I'm not going to do it again on that one, right? What's the point? So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead, Command D, or D, middle mouse button V. Let's duplicate this shape. And then I'll just use this piece as a guide, hold down the V key. There you go. Control H temporarily, get rid of this one, and then Control Shift H brings back my selected piece. So again, we're progressively finishing the model. Now I want to deal with this stuff. So now, guys, I'm going to show you a little bit of how you can be smart. Now, if you've been working light and lean, let's say I didn't put in, because I could have manually put in the hole cuts and do this. I could have totally, gone to town with this. And by the way, there's like a bunch of extra edges here that I don't really need, but I'm not going to worry about that. We'll talk about reductions another time. So I'm going to go ahead and bevel this, guys. All right. I'm going to bevel these, bevel all these shapes. And the good news is that it should be fairly fast to bevel because my edge flow is pretty strong in terms of the way these things are coming together. Probably going to need an edge here. Probably going to need an edge here, edge there. All right. Edge here, edge here. All the major transitions. All right. Now I'm going to save the hole cuts for a second pass on their own because I think they're either sharper or more blended in. All right. So I've got all the edges that I think I need selected. Oops, missed that one. All right. Cool. So I'm going to go Shift, right click, bevel edge. All right. Now what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and defy a little bit of, now you're saying, why did I just do a single edge bevel? You're going to see in a minute. All right. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go over here, select, and I'm going to bevel these guys. Okay. So this is a little bit of kind of stuff that I've learned over the years in terms of what I call anticipating the workflow. In other words, I've been working in Maya long enough to know what to expect from when I plan my edges a certain way. Maya helps me fill in the rest with what I call a shorthand version of modeling, which is what I've been doing here. And now if I want the resolution for those holes, all right, I'm going to make my bevel a little bit skinnier there. Okay, control. Because it's not that. And then what I'm going to do is instead of manually adding edges everywhere, all right, and I'm also going to tighten up the bevel on this one too. I think I still can in the history stack. Yeah, I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go and fraction, control. Yeah, I'm going to tighten up the bevel here. And now I'm going to leverage something that I normally don't show beginners, but because you guys came to my class, well, you guys get a chance to see this, all right? Should edges that are flush with other parts be beveled differently? You know, that's a good question. You know, I'm kind of, that might be a good call. And again, you have to kind of make that call, maybe make him smaller, Gary. You got to look at the reference. Even the fact, I'm actually going to be exaggerating the relationship here, but let me get to that question in just a moment once I'm there. So I want to show you guys this part because this is important to kind of see this before I do it. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it here because we don't have a copy of it here. And I want to make sure I have a copy of it somewhere up here. All right. So this, and I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to go shift right click and then I'm going to do a 1 division level of smooth. All right. Because I've been working efficiently and I've been working to try to plan my curvature, I've got holding edges through the form of this like single edge bevel. Everything is going to go. I'm just going to go ahead and smooth this once over. Boom. You guys see what I just did? So I took this shape, planned it lightly, kept it simple all the way through, made sure that I had all my curvature planned and the whole thing. I still want this to be hard-edged, but now I've got the edges that I need. I've made it smoother because I know I needed some extra edges going around. And there you go. Now, this is not something to be taken lightly. This is not recommended for people who are just looking for a crutch. This is not a crutch, not even close to it. All right, this is actually a way of working that a lot of advanced modelers will do. They work what they call like anticipating the smoothing process. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead here and say, well, I'm going to go and get these caught up too, but they need bevels. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and get these done because this is where the parts meet. All right, get that. Actually, I don't even think I need the bevel. You know what? I'll do the bevel back there anyway. All right. Now, if you want a sharper edge, you just keep 2 segments. And honestly, you know, that's probably what I probably would have done before with the other stuff. Or you got to make a really, really tight single edge. But I'm going to go with that. I'm going to keep this tight. I'll do the same thing here. All right. Bevel. And then keep it tight. Oops, not depth. Duh. Control. Now, if I do a single edge here, we can compare what's happening in the smooth. So I'm going to go ahead here, and let's go here. I'll smooth this out. It's a little bit more rounded. All right. If I do it here with 2 segments and smooth this, this will keep its sharpness. Do you see the difference? So one edge down here kind of makes it a little bit more rounded. In a way, I might have needed to do that with the other work that I did before. 2 segments keeps things absolutely sharp. So it's just a matter of what you think works better for that piece. I actually think this works better for that piece. And you know what? Before I get rid of that other piece, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it, and then hold down the V key, match it, whoops. Control H to hide it, delete that one, Control Shift H to bring back that. There you go. And let me just turn off the wireframe unshaded. So now we have that and that. So now I'm just going to go ahead, get rid of these guys. All right, there go my hole cuts. And then let's go over here, Command duplicate them. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn on my wireframe so I can see where I'm snapping. I'm going to use the middle vert here as a guide. There we go. And now I start grouping things. And now I start kind of getting the benefits of grouping. So let's go ahead and do a little file management. Let's call these wooden caps. Okay, and Maya numbers them. I'll just call this a support. I don't know. All right. I'll call this top. And then I'll label these as table sides. There's 2 of them because Maya will count them for you. I'm going to group these guys together in their own group. Command G. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and change the pivot because right now the pivot is over here. You know what? Let's just change the pivot. And let's go Command. How do I want to do this? I can mirror it. Let's go. I'm going to put this over here. D middle mouse button V. So I'm putting the pivot right in the middle of the piece of wood. I'm going to duplicate it, and then that's negative X. So go -1x scale. So there you go. That gets to the other side. And then it looks like I've got a little bit of a discrepancy here size-wise. Let me go see something. Let's go to Panels, Orthographic, Front. So maybe I didn't get that. Oh, duh. So that maybe that wasn't a middle. What's wrong with that? Yeah, maybe that wasn't the middle, or maybe that wasn't the best spot for it. There we go. So yeah, it looks like that top part wasn't the exact middle. Duh. I should have used this part as my middle. I knew something was wrong. All right, so let's start it again. So instead of putting that pivot over here, I'm going to go Command duplicate. I'm going to change the pivot over here. Put it over here. D, C, and then -1. Now it's perfect. So I guess my tabletop up here isn't so divided in the middle like I thought it was. That's kind of funny. All right. And that's it. So you could see where we came from. So if you get this far with your stuff, and by the way, when I look at this piece, again, I'm kind of thinking that maybe, you know, I probably would have double beveled this. So that's my retrospect, just to keep this shape a little bit from being, you know, maybe it looks like we lost a little bit of sharpness on the corners here. All right. But you can always fix that. You can always go in here and, you know, slide edge and do a bunch of things to kind of tighten that stuff up. All right. If not, I just go back to here and start again and then sharpen it up. All right. And then after that, guys, you just want to do a little file management. I would say, again, I'll just kind of Command S this. Let's go ahead and go to the outliner and let's see what mess I made. As a matter of fact, I think I'm just going to go ahead. Like there's so many transform nodes. See, this is something that's really important for you guys to see right now. I built up a lot of what we call transform nodes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to like grab this and I'm going to do, all of this is going to be grouped together as one, Command G. So I'm going to steal all that geometry out of the group. And I'm just going to call this table. All right. Now I've already labeled the parts. All right. Now if you want to do subgroups like the way I did here, that's fine. You can kind of put these in their own clusters. That's entirely up to you if you want to kind of do something like that, you know, where it's Command G and it's underneath its own thing. Just make sure you call it support, boom, whatever. But you don't really need it unless you want to go that far with it. Now this is important, guys. I'm going to select all this geometry because all this stuff that we did up here, there's a ton of transforms. And the transforms come from when I duplicated geometry, when I stole geometry, when I did a lot of leapfrogging. All right. So this helped build a lot of the other stuff that we have on this side. But really, I just want this geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and go and do a delete history, freeze transform, center pivots on that, and now boom. And that is the final piece. All right. And anyway, I'm hoping that this was helpful. Any questions, guys? I'm going to open it up and turn on the mics. All right.
So -1 flips the geometry?
Yeah. Yes, it does. All right, and that's assuming that you've frozen the transforms already on that object, so it's a whole number 1. All right, so that's you know what you would do. Gary, can we write off the unaligned tabletop as having more character? That's a good question. You know what? There's a part of me that would probably like to get that more exact, but I think that at the time, you know what? I think what happened here is that when I made it, I just kind of didn't exactly divide it in the middle. So what I would probably do, Gary, is I'd probably just go ahead here. I'm going to delete that side, and then I'm just going to go ahead and mirror that. All right. And let's see, is that an X? Yeah, let's go ahead and mirror an X. Boom. And now I get the benefits of some of the work I did on this side with the uneven edge flow. And guess what? Now it's probably more even. If anything, I might have to center this with this guy. Boom, which I just did now. So there you go, Gary. If that's like messing with your head and you were starting to twitch. All right. But technically, you could definitely beat it up and make it as unaligned as you want to kind of create that feeling of, you know, it not being machined. It's a lot of this was made by hand, potentially, or sawed, and there's always going to be variety in the pieces of wood. And the whole point of it is to have character, you know. So there you go. Do we have to make the edges flow from one object to another? I'm not sure what you mean by make one object edges flow. I would say, like in the places where these two pieces met, ideally you should match like the amount of edges from, like, let's say it's a 16-sided object here, 16-sided hole is a good match. Do you know what I mean? So I do think that, yeah, to your point, I might do that. Now, if I wanted to tighten up these holes just a little bit, I might go ahead with the slide edge tool and just kind of middle mouse button and then just kind of come in there and then tighten up that relationship. See how it sharpens it up? So I might do that. Shift right click, slide edge, and then you can kind of go in there and, okay. All right. So that changes also the way it looks there compared to here. As a matter of fact, I like that a lot better. And you can add variety too if you want to. So, go in there, and it doesn't have to be perfectly the same everywhere. All right. You can kind of add variety with your edges. Let's say you wanted to slide the edges tighter here. You can kind of say make that wider or narrower. You can really go in there and go to town on this stuff. The whole point is to use your judgment artistically combined with the reference to make the best choices for you. See, I just added variety. Do you see what I did here? I slid the edge, and now the edge quality is more worn here and then sharper here. I'm going to go this and do the other side. I'm going to go make it sharper here by sliding these edge there, and there we go. And so now, you see how I've kind of made the wood where it's a little bit more worn up on top, worn on the bottom, and then sharper in the middle? So you could really go to town on edge quality, guys, and add the variety that that's there. As a matter of fact, I might go back now and just say, you know what, let's pull that out there. Let's go ahead and pull this one over here on this side. And the next thing you know, I've got it looking and feeling like wood. Okay? So guys, I know it took me a little bit of time to show this, but you know what? I mean, I've been modeling for a while, so what maybe takes me an hour and a half to do, it's probably going to take a couple of you at least 3 to 4 hours. But you got to look at it as process. You got to look at it as a way of thinking, so that be patient with your learning, but find a way to budget your time. And know this, that I was able to get a lot done just by getting this first move figured out, how big and wide the overall shape was. And then we cut it apart and then made a more advanced block out. And then this sort of represents a refined block out, but now we're starting to transition into the actual modeling. And then we made the jump here with that shape. This is sort of our transition, where if we had like one other step for the modeling, it would be this with this stuff figured out. And I can go here, boom. And then we went from that, okay, we went from that to the model that we have here. All right. So guys, just like drawing, this is a way of thinking, a way of looking at the world, and a way of utilizing your tools. Start thinking about the places where parts meet so that you can leapfrog or cut apart shapes. Start being opportunistic. And the only way that's going to happen is you're just going to be modeling more. And then you're going to figure out these connections. Oh, I could do this easier. I'm sure someone who's been modeling longer than me probably sees, things that I could be doing faster and more efficient. So it's always a process of developing and becoming. But for the purposes of what you guys are doing this first week, I think this kind of touches on a lot of the key things that we're kind of looking at. And again, the main goal is, do I have, am I really getting the shapes I need and want for what I'm modeling? And, and that's the game we're playing. That's what we are doing. And by the way, even though they're subtle, you see how those bevels are now kind of separating the pieces? This is why lighting becomes your best friend in terms of saying, do I need to do more? Do you see how the lighting is now starting to reveal the uneven bevels that I put in there? That's starting to add the character. And you can go to town on this whole thing. I haven't even touched this part. And, I could really love this a lot longer and really go to town with it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you guys. And, tell your friends what they missed. Looks like 22 of you guys. So that's about maybe a third, maybe a little bit more than a third of the class attended. So I hope this was useful to you guys. And I just want to wish you luck on your work this weekend. Make sure you're focused and that you're budgeting your time accordingly, and then you get your work seen by either one of the 2 lab guys that are there for checkout. You want to know ahead of the delivery time that your work is progressing and could be checked out or is checked out already. and make sure you get the feedback if it doesn't get checked out, what you need to fix so that you can make checkout on this. All right? Any questions? I'm going to open it up to questions now. You're welcome. All right? And you guys have lab after this, so don't be late for some of you who are in the first lab. All right? And for the second lab, if there's anybody from the second lab that, has any questions, I can linger a little longer. If you guys also think that the office hours are kind of, something that are worth doing, this way as well, I can kind of leave my office hours where I can kind of have this in the background in case you physically can't see me, but you can show me your work. What I can do is I could trade or make you the lead presenter just by selecting you, and then you can show me what you're working on, and then I can give you feedback that way if that helps some of you. Okay? You're welcome, guys. Have a good one. Great lab, productive today. All right. We could just talk about Godzilla. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Where there'll be a video of this, I want to be able to come back to it. I could make one. I'm going to stop recording this now. So I'm going to go ahead, stop.